Are you contemplating transferring law schools? Can't decide to stay at this one or transfer to that one? Well, stay tuned because this is Transferring Law Schools 101. All right, y'all, turn me up then. So what we're going to talk about today is transferring law schools. I get asked this question like once or twice, probably 3, sometimes 5 times a week about transferring law schools. And I've been there before. So I'm like, you know what? I got you. I'm about to make a video, and I have postponed making this video for at least 2 years. That's neither here or there. Imposter syndrome. We're going to talk about that another day at another time. But please do be prepared because this video is going to be a little lengthy because I want to make it as comprehensive as possible, because if I had something like this when I was transferring, or just things like little tips and tidbits to consider when transferring, I would have sat down and watched the whole video. So again, this video is going to be a little long, and I'm so sorry, but I want it to be as comprehensive as possible for you guys, and I want to give you guys as much information as I possibly can to a bunch of different people who may be watching this at some point in time, okay? So stay tuned, and we are going to hop right on into the tea. So as you can see, I have my notebook here, and that is because I wanted to make sure that I did not skip a beat, because I want to make sure that if you guys are watching this, no matter what school you're coming from, that this is just a comprehensive tool that you can use. I remember when I was transferring law schools, there wasn't a lot of like blogs or YouTube videos out there on that subject matter. In fact, I think I probably found more negative feedback or videos on YouTube than I did positive. So let you know, this is all good vibes, good energy. I have already started with the smudging process. We got some eucalyptus over here burning along with a nice mango candle there. But just to start off, I want to kind of give you guys some background so that way you can kind of get to know me better. I originally went to the Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. As you can see, I am wearing some paraphernalia. Though I did transfer from Southern, I am still a proud Jaguar. What people don't know is that I actually, after graduating from LSU for undergrad, I actually started my master's at Southern. It was kind of in that space after taking a semester off in between undergrad and deciding whether do I want to go to law school or do I want to like just get a master's. And I decided to go to Southern and start my master's program. So got in the program. It was a master's for public administration, and fairly quickly realized that it just was not for me. I just was not feeling the vibration of the subject matter. I probably should have enrolled in an MBA, but you know, at the time you're just doing things. But everything happens for a reason, right? So at the end of my spring semester, my MPA, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to put my energy towards going to law school. So I had already tried going into law school, but let me tell you something. I did not know anything about the law school process in undergrad. I'm going to be completely forthcoming with you. I took the LSAT one time, barely studied for it, and did terrible because I didn't understand the test or the scoring scheme or anything of that nature. I just went in there sight unseen and just took a test, thinking that it would be like the ACT or the SAT. It ain't. So don't do that. But I'm just being honest with y'all. And I wasted a lot of time and energy in doing that. But, you know, nevertheless, that's neither here or there because we are here now. But so I get into Southern the following fall after my MPA, after the spring semester of my MPA, and I enroll into the part-time program. I was working at a school at the time, and I just was not ready to give up working. Like, I cannot stand being broke. I like being able to live my life, and I like to be able to travel. So part-time program at Southern gave me the most flexibility. And I also had a sense of loyalty to Southern, right? Like, I was already there and enrolled in the MPA program, so the transition over to the law school was easier. And two, I must admit, without the help of the staff at Southern University, I would not be in law school. Southern paid for me to take an LSAT prep course. LSU did offer one with Kaplan, I think, but I remember it being over $1,200. I'm a first gen. I didn't have that type of money. My parents didn't have that type of money. So I was like, I need something, because self-study works for me, but I, at the time, needed something more structured, like a classroom setting. But Southern had a class in which they still do offer. So if you are looking to get into law school, and if you are interested in Southern or any school, actually, because people take this course and don't necessarily go to Southern, but there is a course that is taught by a former LSAC administrator or something, and he designed the course to pretty much be like a crash course on the LSAT. And if you take the course seriously, you can see a great improvement in your LSAT score, and it's pretty affordable too. I remember the course being, I think, under $500 or $600, which is probably one of the cheapest courses you could find for the LSAT. LSAT prep is extremely expensive. Like, sis, some LSAT courses cost a Chanel bag. Like, what? I know people who have paid like thousands of dollars for a private tutor. I, again, did not have those type of resources. If you have those type of resources, kudos to you. This does not apply to you. But if you are in the Baton Rouge area or in Louisiana, period, or can make your way to Baton Rouge from Mississippi, Texas, I saw people driving 3 hours to come to this course every Saturday, all day, just because it's worth it. And it's taught by actual law school professors, and there are professors from Southern, Loyola, and I think we had one from Tulane while I was there, or he worked at like Tulane and LSU. He just worked at various law schools throughout the state. But nevertheless, again, shout out to Southern, shout out to Professor Gerard, because without their help, I would not be in law school. Like, they really did go above and beyond for all of us in that course who were there and who wanted to go to Southern and expressed interest in going to Southern, and making sure that was possible by making sure we did well enough on the LSAT and that had everything that we needed to be a viable candidate for law school. Southern had one of the only, I think Southern in Loyola in Louisiana at the time had the only part-time programs. Again, I wanted to work, so making a transfer move for me, I had to make a lateral move where I can get into a program that also had a part-time program. But before I get into that, I kind of want to discuss with you guys why I transferred in the first place. I get asked the question like, did you transfer because Southern was an HBCU? No. No, that's not the reason why at all. I transferred because, one, during that time in my life, I was going through a deep phase of depression. I had just got out of a pretty toxic relationship, during my undergrad years, and I just was like kind of going through depression, kind of that postgraduate depression, not really knowing what I wanted to do with myself. And then I finally get into law school, and law school is just stressful. Like, we know it's just a new way of thinking, a new way of living, and a new form of commitment. And I just felt like I needed support. Not only that, but I have parents who are just getting older, right? I don't think you really realize that's one reality that doesn't set in with us while we're out doing our own thing, is that our parents are getting older. I moved away from home, and home for me is Atlanta. Shout out to the A. But I moved away from home at 18, and I went to LSU. And by that point, by the time I got into Southern, I was already away from home for almost 5 years. So I was truly homesick. And not just only that, seeing your parents get older, seeing life events happen, missing birthdays, missing lifestyle moments that you would like to spend with your close family and friends can really play a toll on you. And something like law school that is so daunting, you need a support system. So considering that I had already been away from home for that amount of time, I just knew that I don't think I would be able to stay here for an additional 2 to 3 years. So I was like, starting probably by the spring semester at Southern, I started to, really feel like my spirit was saying, it's time for you to go home. And not just only that, having a mom and a dad who has battles with different various health issues, having a grandmother who's here, or we relocated her here to Atlanta, who's getting older, tomorrow is just not promised. So I just did not like the idea of being away from my family, that just another set of 2 and 3 years, and at least not away from them while I'm going through something so stressful and so demanding like law school. And not just only that, Baton Rouge was just a different city. Like, at that time, The Alton Sterling shooting had just occurred, and I was highly involved with that. Even on my job, we're doing things, for the family. So that within itself was just a traumatic experience. And it just became hard for me to stay in Baton Rouge as a city, because Baton Rouge has a lot of work to do in terms of race relations. And I just felt like I had been fighting on the front line for some time, and I needed a break. I needed a mental, an emotional, and eventually a physical break, a distance break. I still love Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge is like my second home. Louisiana is like a second home to me. Still travel and visit there frequently. But again, I felt like my mental health was at risk and I just needed to depart. Now, let me also say this. I was at Southern and I did extremely well at Southern. When I left Southern, I was ranked number 1 in my class. And mind you, law school rankings, if you already know this, does not mean first person all the time. It's more so percentile. So I was in the first percentile, meaning that myself and I think maybe 3 or 4 other people were ranked first, as in like we pretty much all had the same GPA, and then it goes into a tier system like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. So when I left Southern, people were shocked because I was doing so well, but I think people could kind of understand, because at some point I remember even having like a study partner and some of my classmates like, Bianca, like you're just kind of not like yourself anymore, right? Like even my friends could kind of tell, like we could tell you're kind of like unhappy, and I was just not happy. I just was not happy being there. I was ready to go. I was ready to come back home, and it just is what it is. And luckily though, I had a great support system at Southern, and I spoke with my academic advisor, Professor Gerard, and just kind of started to express these feelings to him early on in the spring. And he was very much so, very extremely understanding, because I was not the first and I will not be the last out-of-state student who would feel that way. And I just pretty much told him, like, I miss my mom, like, and I think at the time it was somewhere between the end of the fall or spring semester, my mom had got sick again, and I was just like, I feel like I just need to go home. And I started to just kind of put that thought in the horizon. And of course, he's like, we want to make this as easy for you. We want you to stay. And, they did whatever they could to like try to make that possible. But it's really hard. Like Atlanta and Baton Rouge is not a hop and skip it away. It's an easy flight to catch, but you have to still drive to New Orleans and do all that. But as far as like a quick drive, no, it's like 7.5 hours from Atlanta to Baton Rouge. So it's really hard access just getting from here to there. Just that alone creates a barrier. Now, if I was like had family, or if my mom was like, say, Houston, which is a hop and a skip away, then it might be a little bit different, because going home more frequently is a lot more feasible. Going home driving 7.5, 8 hours every weekend was not feasible for me. So that is one of the reasons. And my final reason was I came to realize that I love sports and entertainment. I was a former sports reporter. I worked for LSU football, and throughout undergrad, I was like, I want to do this. This is what the industry I want to be in. And even worked at a sports magazine and radio station as a producer. So I wanted to go somewhere where I knew that I could get A, a quality education, B, for an affordable rate, and C, that would offer me all of the programs, clinics, and organizations that I was looking for in a law school. So I began the search process. And I think when you're thinking about transferring, you need to kind of meditate and pray on why it is you want to transfer. It took me half of my spring semester and pretty much the whole following summer to actually decide to make the move. I made the final decision probably in the late night hour before I had to pay a deposit to Georgia State. So my first tip of advice to you guys is to do your research. The first step process in anything, you guys are lawyers, y'all are about to be lawyer leaders, and y'all already know when you get presented with a problem, the first thing you need to do is research. That is no different than when you're doing the transfer process. I went, and the process is actually pretty much the same as is when you're initially applying for law school, right? Like, I think there are some shortcuts. So I did realize that some law schools didn't necessarily ask for all of the same things that they did for when you're initially applying, but pretty much all of the same requirements, like your transcripts, your LSAT scores, letters of recommendation, and what else, and personal statements, all that stuff was definitely still just like the bases requirement for everything. I think I realized most of them only required maybe 1 or 2 letters of recommendation, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe Georgia State required like a letter of recommendation from somebody you worked with and someone from your actual previous law schools, like a professor, academic advisor, dean, whatever. And I believe you had to get clearance from your previous law school that you were in good standing with them financially and academically, which is pretty standard across all law schools. So I would say before you even get into the process of transferring, make sure you good. Like, make sure you good with the bursar's office, the registrar's office. Make sure you don't owe nobody no money. Make sure that you are just, in the clear. Make sure you are not on academic probation. Because I can tell you now, if you're on academic probation, transferring is probably like something that you probably shouldn't be considering right now. Because you want to get your grades up, because I know at least at Georgia State, when I transferred, they only accepted like 14 applicants. And when we went to our orientation, they told us they had done like hundreds of applications and they only accepted 14. It was either 12 or 14. I can't remember the exact number, but it was either 12 or 14. And that year, they told us with pride, you guys are the largest class that we ever accepted for transfer students. And we were all sitting there looking like it's not even 15 of us. So you have to understand that a lot of schools, especially in urban environments like Atlanta, might have a really competitive transfer applicant pool. So like, you want to make sure that you are on your A game and that you're coming with the best possible grades possible, the best recommendation letters, the best, just the best of the best. You want to put your best foot forward. But first, start off with research. Go to the LSAC website and just list out kind of the same thing that you did when you initially applied, those schools that you're interested in. When you're looking at those schools, check for deadlines. Deadlines. Everybody's deadlines are different. I can't remember what school, but I missed the deadline because their deadline for transfer was due like around Memorial Day weekend. Georgia State's wasn't due until like June or early July or something of that nature. Check for certifications and clinics, making sure that if it's something or a subject matter that you're interested in for practice, that school has something in that practice area that interests you, right? So whether it's a student organization, a clinic, or an actual certification program, you want to make sure that they have it. So for Georgia State, they had sports and entertainment, but the year that I actually transferred, the program was a pilot program at the time. They had just given one of the top entertainment professors and lawyers in pretty much the country the green light to start a certification program into, pretty much create like a sports and entertainment sector at Georgia State. But they had already had a public interest. They already had health law, intellectual property. So intellectual property was my fallback plan if they didn't have it. And they also had like urban planning and urban studies. And it's like a joint program with Georgia Tech. And that's really cool, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing your research on what the school actually offers. Check out also the student organizations. Like Southern, of course, is a HBCU. So some of the organizations are similar, but the way they operate is definitely different. For me, I was looking for the GAWJA chapter, trying to make sure that the Black Law Students Association was active and that they were doing programs that actually contribute to the perpetuity of Black people. And I found Georgia State, and that was definitely the case. They are the most active student organization at Georgia State College of Law, period. And I saw that and I was like, okay, great. And, especially for me being a Black woman, I wanted to transfer somewhere where I would still be visible and heard, and I could be active in my community on campus and around the campus. Of course, this is home, so that process was a little bit easier for me. Make sure if you are a part-time student like I was, that the school you're transferring to also has a part-time program, because the part-time program is very much so different than the full-time program. The part-time program is structured where your first year is broken up into 2 years, but your second year, you're still wrapping up some of those 1L courses, but you have also started to take 2L courses such as con law and evidence and even professional responsibility. So you just want to make sure that you're making a lateral move. If you're full-time, of course, that's different. Now for me, I started off part-time for my first 2 years, and then I did transition over into full-time. Actually, I think it was like a year and a half, but I did transition over into full-time and started taking 4 more classes. Now I'm at the full load. I'm taking 5 classes each semester, and have been for the past year. Okay, y'all, I'm just checking my notes real quick because I want to make sure I'm not missing a beat. Okay, so I will also say start going ahead and working your network. I started DMing people, literally searching hashtags on Instagram like GSU Law, Georgia State Law, Georgia State COL, whatever hashtags associated with it. I started looking on their Instagram, checking their followers, and just started hitting up people like, yo, I see you went there, or I see you're a student there. Can you tell me about your experience? Do you know of any other transfer students? Do you mind, connecting me with them? And I actually did get connected with a girl who transferred from FAMU. Was it FAMU? No, I lied. I got connected with a girl who transferred from Florida Coastal, and I was able to connect with her, and she was already there for a semester, and she, just kind of told me about like her process and how it was for her being at, Georgia State. And I started asking people about professors and just courses to take, because if I'm not mistaken, when I transferred to Georgia State, they picked my classes for me. And Georgia State's part-time program is both evening and day, but most people who are in the part-time program work, so they're mostly evening classes. So you want to kind of look out for those professors who tend to teach in the evening. You also want to just see what the overall course schedule is like. Like, a lot of law schools have it set up to where a lot of the good electives are taught by adjuncts, so they are in the evening hours after people get off work. So you just want to kind of be mindful of that. But you also want to consider some other things outside of the law school. First, you want to consider the cost of living in the city that you're moving to. I was moving home, so that transition was easier. I stayed at home for 6 months to save up some money, but I knew that I had to get out of my mama's crib. Like, I could not live there. Like, no. Like, I had to get out of my mama's crib. And that's not because I couldn't live at home or I didn't want to save money, but I was like, I'm working. I can kind of afford it. And I'm just at that age where I just value personal space. And don't want to live underneath your parents' roof. And at that time, I was like 24, so I was like, I need to be in my own space. It was a great decision, but you need to look at the average cost for an apartment within I would say 5 to 10 mile radius of where your law school is situated, because you don't want to spend your time just traveling to school, because that within itself is really stressful, especially if you live in a place like Atlanta where the traffic sucks. Traffic can literally change a 5-minute drive to a 20-minute drive quite easily here. So you want to make sure that you're either living somewhere where public transportation is readily available, like MARTA here, or a bus, or, a biking system, whatever. You want to look at that if you don't have a vehicle, but you also want to look at just travel time, because we already know by the time you get to school, having to go through and fight through traffic to get there, it just plays a role in your mind, and you just want to kind of be mindful of that. And what the cost of living is. I would say here in Atlanta, if you are interested in going to Georgia State, the average 1-bedroom in Atlanta costs about $1,200 to $1,300 if you are living in the downtown area. For me, I was working downtown and going to school downtown, so I was like, living downtown made sense because I could walk if anything happens, and again, feasibility. It was pretty convenient, and it was pretty reasonable for me at the time. You also want to consider roommates. If you are moving to a city like DC or LA or New York, where it's probably more likely than not that you will need a roommate, you want to start with connecting with people who are either in grad school at the school you're at or in law school at the school you're at. You don't want to kind of partner up with an undergrad where we all know what's going we know what's going on in undergrad. You're not as focused, or you could be focused. Like I was focused, but I still partied too. Definitely don't party as much now, but I still get it in a little bit. But you definitely want to just kind of partner up with somebody who's on the same vibration and wavelength as you is when it comes to like work ethic, quiet hours, and all those things that you value as being a law student. And then too, also you want to consider dorms. I know even at LSU, we had East Campus and West Campus apartments, and you did see a lot of the either senior level undergraduates, so your juniors and seniors, or your graduate students or your vet and law school students living in some of those housing accommodations that were offered on campus. That might be a more reasonable option for you. I know I also considered transferring to Howard, and I was looking at the different living arrangements, and it's high as hell to live in DC, period. So that kind of just put a knot on that for me. But I do know that they were offering like different housing options for students on campus. So you definitely want to do your research to see if that's an option, because if you're comfortable with that and you can get maybe a single room, and not just like go back to living in a classic dorm room. And dorm rooms we know now are really fancy. It's pretty much like having an apartment. Then I would 10 out of 10 recommend that you do that. And of course, of higher priority is cost of attendance. When you're making a move like this, you want to make sure, am I going to be spending more money to go to school by going to the school, unless it's just like, you're transferring to Harvard, Yale, like, the name is going to pay for itself in the long haul. Do you, boo, do you. But otherwise, you want to definitely consider cost of attendance. For me, I kind of came in like, I need to get my tuition paid. It took me a full year to figure out how to do that, and I did it. So I came in like, I know that y'all don't offer transfer student scholarships, but there has to be some other way for me to get my tuition paid, because I'm smart, I deserve to be here, and I'm worthy of a full tuition waiver. And I eventually found that through a graduate assistantship. Graduate assistantships, TA assistantships, or research positions are other creative ways that you can kind of work the system without necessarily having to earn a scholarship or a grant to get your tuition paid. Right now, today, and for the past year, my tuition has been paid in full. Thank you, God. And which is just a great blessing. That right there is saving me $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. I can't remember how much tuition is at Georgia State, but it's saving me about $10,000 to $15,000. Georgia State is the cheapest law school in the state of Georgia, which also makes it reason why it's so competitive. But it's a very affordable education. So going from Southern to going from Southern and paying out of state fees to moving to Georgia State and being in-state student and getting a tuition waiver, I think I can tell you this year my fees are $2,000 per semester. So essentially I'm paying like $5,000 a year for my JD from a really good law school. So there's that. Another consideration is bar performance. You want to look at how does these schools perform on the bar exam. That was one of the biggest things for me. Now, see, here in Georgia, I would say, all the schools are kind of pretty competitive. You have, of course, Georgia State, Emory, UGA, and Mercer. Those are the 4 law schools here in Georgia. If I left one out, my bad. John Marshall. John Marshall is the other one. John Marshall is another local metropolitan Atlanta law school. But pretty much all of them, UGA, Georgia State, and Emory are kind of competitive with each other, I would say. Georgia State and UGA are kind of very similar. They're both public institutions, whereas Emory is kind of like more on those Ivy League lines, and it's a private school. Now, with that, you got a price tag. Now, with UGA, it's a public school, but they don't have a part-time program. Georgia State has a part-time program. It's in an urban environment, and it's affordable. So those are the things you want to look at. And then the bar performance, though, like, again, those 3 kind of compete with each other. I will say Georgia State has beat Emory and UGA and Mercer and John Marshall in the bar exam. Like, we have a very high bar exam performance for first-time bar takers. That is a big deal. You want to make sure the school that you're transferring to, that you're getting a quality education at a good rate, and then that you are getting equipped with the tools and knowledge that you need to sit for the bar exam and pass. And Georgia State takes the bar exam extremely serious. All schools do, but there's there's a way of doing things. There's 9 ways to skin a cat. Georgia State, I think, has found their formula and they're sticking to it, and it's working. I think we were ranked number 5 in the nation for outperformance. Like, pretty much that ranking means like, wow, y'all performed better than what we thought you would. I don't know why, but and we were ranked number 5 in that category, which is a great thing, because that means that y'all, this is a building full of people who are go-getters, hard workers, and just intelligent. People often, at least here in Georgia, they always pull from like Emory or UGA, because those are just like household like names, but Georgia State is too, and so I am proud to be a part of that. But nevertheless, my next tip will be to look at the cost of travel to your hometown. Again, for me, from coming from Atlanta to Baton Rouge would cost let's say about $100 if you drive. It can cost about $150 upwards, $400. I saw a $400 round trip ticket from New Orleans to Atlanta. It just all depends on the time of the year, what's going on, because you have to remember New Orleans is a hub for social activities, festivals, Mardi Gras, all that. So you just want to kind of check on that, because if you're going from like say Atlanta to California, that's a long drive and it can be an expensive flight. So you just kind of want to look at that cost of living. And next step, after you do all your research and you figure out all of that good stuff, you need to apply early. Applying early is going to save you a lot of hassle in the long run. What you want to do is to first get your application done, get all your requirements, because when you start asking people for recommendation letters, it could take them 2 and 3 weeks to get back to you. So you just want to make sure that you are ahead of the game. So I started kind of stacking up everything, gathering all my information, probably about the April or May of my last semester at Southern. So you want to go ahead and get your application in early so you can meet those deadlines. Go ahead and send, even if once you figure out the list of schools on LSAC, go ahead and get those school codes and send your FASFA over to them, because you want to get your financial aid package as soon as possible so you know what you're eligible for, because each school's financial aid is set up differently and what you're going to get offered may vary by the school. So you want to go ahead and get that in, so that way once you are accepted into the schools, that you can kind of do your pros and cons of each school and kind of really have a comprehensive look on how to make that decision on where to go. So go ahead and get your FAFSA in early. Let me check my notes real quick, y'all. Yeah. All right, so my next tip will be to you guys, don't tell anyone that you're transferring until you made the decision to do so, 1, and 2, that you successfully apply and get accepted. Then this is just on some real tip. People can be extremely negative, and when you tell somebody something that they themselves want to do, or they just can't figure out how you're doing it, it could change the trajectory, right? If you get bad juju, bad energy on what you got going on, people will throw salt on something that they don't understand, because the vision is yours. God gave you the vision, God gave you the feeling, God gave you the spirit, God gave you the discernment. It has nothing to do with you. So sometimes you just have to keep things to yourself. I personally did not even tell my mom, or I didn't tell my mom. I told my dad. I didn't even tell my mom that I was transferring back home, because that's just the less anxiety, less pressure on making that move, especially if you're transferring to a school back to your hometown. You don't necessarily want to tell everybody, because you don't want people to think that this is a free-for-all for folks to just be hitting you up, calling and get you out partying and stuff. You're there to go to do a job, you're there to go to work, you're there to get that JD so you can go be great. So I would just say kind of exercise discretion in who you tell about your next moves in regarding to what school you're getting ready to go to. Just because, again, you want all positive vibes around it, and you also just don't want a lot of anxiety going into, or the pressure of choosing which school to transfer to. You want to have a clear mind, a clear heart, and a clear spirit. Okay? Don't worry about being judged from your classmates at your current law school for leaving, right? This life is about you, and your supporters will support you. I am still very much so still tight and cool with professors and students at Southern. I even have mentees at Southern where I've helped them get into law school. And if you need mentorship, I will drop that into the description box. I do offer free mentorship for anybody who is interested in law school and they just need, some help, and I am here to help you guys, so please see the description box for that information. But nevertheless, when you go to law school, we all know law school is inherently competitive, right? Because you're ranked. Everything is about an arbitrary metric, whether it's your grades, whether it's your actual ranking, whether it's how you performed on a test, whatever it is, or if you made law review, if you were on moot court and all this other stuff. So it can kind of get a little cliquey sometimes. I would say Southern was really like a big family. Every family has its issues, right? And that's exactly what Southern was. But my classmates were really supportive. Again, I told you, even my own classmates was like, Bianca, we can see you kind of not like the same. You kind of seem unhappy. And again, that was the case. And I'm happy that I had people who had the emotional intelligence to recognize that within me. But I have heard horror stories for people where they're like, it was some drama around me transferring, people thinking I'm too good or blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about that. This is about you. If you're making a move because it's financial, make the move. We all are going to be paying student loans, and if you're not, kudos to you. But for those of us who are getting it out the mud, you need to be able to make these decisions for you, okay? Don't make it for a parent. Don't make it for a boyfriend. Don't make it for a friend or a classmate. This decision and this journey is solely about you. So don't worry about what the naysayers are going to say, because some people are just going to be negative about it, and that's okay. You just reach out to them and you just tell them bless. But I would say definitely go ahead and reach out to the people at your law school. I think it's all about what you do, but more so how you do it and how you go about doing things. So reach out to some of the people at your law school and let them know how you're feeling, especially if you feel like you're on the verge of like an actual mental break. Then you definitely need to talk to somebody, but you want to talk to them so that way it kind of eases the transition, and that way you keep those connections, because no matter what, this profession is a one big working circle. So even though you may be leaving that law school, the people who you're in law school with will still be your colleagues, and one day your professors will be your colleagues. So you want to always leave on good ties. I went to two of my professors and had a personal conversation with them, and they supported me. At three of my professors, and they supported me. I went to my academic advisor. I even had personal conversations with the chancellor of the law school. That's unheard of for a lot of people, where they can have an actual conversation with the chancellor or the dean. Chancellor Pierre actually even called my parents and had a conversation with my parents about me leaving, because that's how he was advocating for me to stay, of course. But at the end of the day, he did respect my decision. And even till this day, Professor Gerard still my academic advisor still reaches out to me to check in on me. And again, I have about 4 mentees right now who I've assisted with either applying to Southern or getting into Southern. And Southern even gave me this plaque. And that's just for creating a more respectful world. And that's just because I did do a lot of service initiatives in Baton Rouge and at Southern University in general. So once you are accepted into your law school, the things that you want to do is that you want to start, again, reaching out to current students and begin making a network and finding your tribe, because you already know outline banks, all that stuff matters, especially when you're transferring to school like Southern, where you're coming from a school that has both common law and civil law effects, to a school that's strictly common law. So you want to go ahead and kind of get familiar with the people, so that way you can start working those loopholes and finding out the study aids and pretty much working smarter and not harder. And some of those ropes you find out your 1L year, and since you did not do your 1L year at that school, you want to kind of shortcut that by just simply making a friend or two and just kind of asking them, how to navigate that. But you definitely want to look into back to school events. I know for Georgia State, the BALSA has a big back to school barbecue, and that barbecue is where I met a lot of people who are currently a part of my study group. So definitely don't be shy. Get out there, get your face on and just go for it, like take a leap of faith. You've already taken a leap of faith by transferring, so just get out there and go for it. Find commonalities. For me, I am a member and a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, so I of course wanted to reach out to sorors first to see how and who, like where y'all at. I know y'all in here somewhere, and you just want to start there. Or if you were in even something like Beta Club, or if you went to a certain undergraduate institution, you want to ask. So I'm looking for people, and turns out like a homie who used to work with me at football ops was at Georgia State, and I'm like, oh cool, a familiar face. We went to LSU for undergrad, and then I think the following year I started seeing more familiar faces from LSU. So you want to kind of just like look around and just maybe even ask your admissions advisor, like, hey, is there anybody here from Penn, Cal State, LSU, Auburn, whatever, and they will kind of, let you know in a way without giving out too much confidential information, like, oh, this person or this professor went there. I know for me, we even have a professor at Georgia State who graduated from Southern, and I met her at the barbecue. So, you want to make sure that you're just kind of working that network, so that way you don't come into school sight unseen, looking like a deer, don't know where to go, so you kind of want to go ahead and just, again, make a friend or two, find your tribe. And that's just general law school advice. You cannot do this by yourself. Also, go to law firm mixers. I went to a couple of mixers within my first semester at Georgia State. So kind of just subscribe to different newsletters and things of that nature, and just kind of find out like what's going on. And with that, I will also say join local bar associations. So for me, it was Gate City Bar Association, which is like the prominent Black Bar Association here in Atlanta, and then the Atlanta Bar Association. I joined both of those in GAWJA, which is the Georgia Black Women Attorneys Association. So I joined those organizations because they, of course, aligned mostly with what I am and what I identify with. But I went to those events. They have different like seminars, retreats. I went to those, and that way you can start building a network for yourself in terms of like your profession and getting a job and getting internships and clerkships and all of that good stuff. Meet your professors. Once you go through your first week of school, let them know that you're a transfer student, because I think a lot of professors they know that transfer students are kind of like starting all over again. So meet with your professors once you are accepted into your new school and get to know them. I'm gonna just plug this in because on my way to my cousin's baby shower, and I just forgot to say this in the first video, and I feel like it's a very important point. Of course, Georgia State is a larger law school, so you have more people, but they do not rank their transfer students. So we know ranking does matter. I'm not going to be ranked until I graduate. Somebody asked me about my GPA. I had a 3.75 or 3.78, like a 3.8 basically, or 3.75, something like that. When I left Southern, I've been between that 3.3 and 3.4 range at Georgia State. It's definitely a larger pool of people. Georgia State is almost twice the size of Southern's law school in terms of students, something like that. Maybe not quite, but just to give you an approximation. So I'm sorry that I forgot to say that in that video. I was moving so fast, and this is my first time really doing this, so I apologize, but I just wanted to kind of plug it in and just bring that here before I just posted this video, because that is a very important point, because ranking does matter. But yes, so when you're doing your research, just find out that tidbit. Like, my grades also do not count at Georgia State. They just have like satisfactory, and every law school has a a number of credits that they can accept that are just like pretty much pass, fail, satisfactory, whatever, unsatisfactory. So all of the courses I took at Southern did transfer. Everything did transfer, but I did have to get special permission from the dean, who just so happened to be my academic advisor here at State, to get my obligations course, which is like Louisiana contracts, which you take as contracts 2 at Southern. So I had to get special permission to get that like contracts 2 waiver to ensure that I made all the satisfaction requirements for my JD once I do leave Georgia State. So I forgot to put that, so I'm sorry y'all, this is a little ghetto because it's a little out of the touch, but I realized while I was getting dressed after the video, like, oh shoot, I forgot that. So I'm gonna go back to the original video, but I had to plug that in. All right, bye. All right, y'all, so for the last tidbit of this video, I'm going to talk about just the comparisons between the two schools very briefly. If you would like to know more details, please reach out to me because I definitely did not want this video to be longer than like 40 minutes, but I knew it was going to be long because, again, I wanted it to be as comprehensive as possible. But nonetheless, I always get asked, what is the difference between Georgia State and Southern? Like, what is the difference? Well, first of all, Southern is an HBCU, and it's one of the 6 HBCU law schools. And Georgia State is a public institution here in the state of Georgia. Georgia State has a very large population as it is one of the largest PWIs, so it's a predominantly white institution in the Southeast. However, Georgia State has a very unique factor because Georgia State actually graduates more African Americans than they do non-African American students. Georgia State is a very diverse university. Southern University Law Center is also very diverse. Now, I will say the law school, at least in my opinion, through my optics, is not as diverse as Southern, nor is it as diverse than, say, the undergraduate programs at Georgia State. Sorry, y'all. I just want to make sure that it wasn't cutting off on you. But yes, so Georgia State graduate at the undergraduate level. Georgia State is predominantly black, period. But at the law school, that's definitely not the case. The law school, and from optics, of course, just looking, you can't tell someone's nationality, ethnicity, or the social construct of race. But I would say it's just not a lot of people that look like me, from the staff to the student body. There are some, but it's like, if you're familiar with the PWI, you can probably count on one hand the number of people you have that look like you in a classroom, or the number of professors that you may have who look like you throughout the semester. So just kind of keep that in mind too if you are transferring from an HBCU to a PWI, the shock factor that can occur if you've never had that experience. I did go to LSU for undergrad, so I was pretty familiar with not having just all of the shenanigans that just comes with being at a PWI. But let me tell you something. You keep putting your foot on these people's necks. You occupy space, baby. So don't even worry about it. You'll be fine, but you occupy space. But I will say that the culture is different. Hands down, the culture is different. Even in something like, for instance, with D9, at Southern, we had like actual struts and strolls with all of the sorors that we used to do with the professors. We used to have like stroll offs with us and the other sororities and the frats, and we actually kind of centered it around just like an extension of, so to speak, of undergraduate culture, right? So I will say that the HBCU culture was a little bit more fun, and it was a little bit more family oriented, and that wasn't even just for D9 members. We used to have like Fall Fest, and it's really like one big melting pot because, again, Southern is one of the most diverse law schools in the nation. So I will also keep that in mind. If that's something that you're looking for, then definitely consider a HBCU. At least my HBCU, Southern, was like that. I can't speak for the other ones, but I do know that was the case at Southern. Now, I will say professor and students, again, is just different. At Southern, I did have both white and black professors, but I also had majority black professors. And of course, Southern, to me though, I feel like it was almost 50-50, or like I saw just as many black people as I saw white people. So again, if that's something that's important to you, you kind of want to look at that. That's not the case at Georgia State Law. Again, the classroom, most of the people in there just do not look like me. You also want to consider funding and what's available to you. So again, most of our HBCUs are underfunded. That is not the fault of the HBCU. That is the fault of a broken system. And of course, if you have that, then you want to consider what you can, what the school will be able to offer you financially. And Georgia State was able to offer just a little bit more, just because, again, when you're dealing with a bigger school there's just more funds, there's endowments, there's all these different things, and then the law school itself has different, pools of fund money to give to their students. So, again, you just want to kind of look at that, but that is something I will say, that the financial benefit at being at Georgia State was a little bit better than being at Southern, even though Southern is still a very affordable law school. You also want to consider the cities that you're in. So Baton Rouge versus Atlanta, night and day. Baton Rouge is more of a rural, smaller, like college town. It's like a big, small city. But Atlanta, of course, is just an urban, small yet bigger city. So Atlanta, of course, is the entertainment hub of the South, and really starting to become the entertainment hub of the nation, honestly. And Baton Rouge was, centered around very much so LSU and Southern too. But in Baton Rouge, it was still kind of segregated. Atlanta is too. If you're from Atlanta, this is a whole different conversation for a different day. But let me just say this. People look at Atlanta as the Black Mecca. It is. However, you do see a lot more Black, just lawyers, doctors, accomplished, who live all over the city. Whereas in Baton Rouge, I felt like the Black people were kind of concentrated in the peripheral areas of Southern, whereas the white people were concentrated around the peripheral areas of LSU and going towards St. Gabriel. And that within itself even created issues in policy and politics. So you kind of want to look at that too, because if you are a older law student where you have a wife and kids, that can affect where your kids go to school. If they are trying to break off and start their own private, pretty much make their own school system within themselves. So you kind of want to consider some of those things about what city you're moving into, and you want to look at the whole picture. What does that look like for you in your life? Again, Atlanta, of course, is lit. This is definitely more of a party city. If you don't do nothing else, you gonna come to Atlanta and you gonna have a good time, baby. Of course, not so much now because of COVID, but you definitely want to consider those things. Again, the demographics of the area and just all that comes with that. Again, cost of living, and you also want to look at those job and internship opportunities. I will say, in specific to sports and entertainment, the opportunities were a little bit more readily available and just more options to choose from being in Atlanta versus being in Baton Rouge, even though Louisiana too is another film hub. But after I think the legislature did something with the taxes, it's just no longer the cheapest place to film anymore, and Atlanta is. So there's just a lot more opportunities here than there are in Baton Rouge. But I still had opportunities to go back and work for LSU football if I wanted to. There were other things and ways that I had planned to navigate that if I was going to stay at Southern. The program, I would say I feel like I'm challenged. I was challenged at both. If you go to Southern or you went to Southern, you already know how NESL was coming. I had NESL for obligations, which is basically contracts 2 or Louisiana contracts. And she was a very hard professor, period, and she knew her stuff. And I feel like that at Georgia State. So I think the quality of the professors are definitely about neck and neck. They're about the same. They're both, again, we have somebody at Georgia State on staff who too graduated from Southern University Law Center. So I will say that, in terms of just the professors and the quality of the education, they're about the same to me, in my opinion. I felt challenged at both. Now, I will say Georgia State did offer something that Southern didn't, and Southern offered something that Georgia State doesn't. Georgia State, of course, has a sports and entertainment certification program, but Southern had an intellectual property certification program, if I'm not mistaken. But Southern also has a business clinic where you can pretty much take on small business clients to help them with different, legal matters like filing an LLC or trademarks. That's something that we don't have at Georgia State, but I do see it coming down the pipeline, since we do have an intellectual property certification program and a sports and entertainment certification program. We just didn't have a clinic to match with it. I will say, you know, of course, my last comparison would just be this is home versus just being out of state. I did make Baton Rouge home, but there's just nothing like being home with your actual family and closest friends. And of course, that is going to just aid in affordability, and you know, just access and ease and feasibility of everything and convenience to have a mom, you know, hey yo, I don't feel like cooking today. Can you know, hook your girl up. You feel me? So turn me up then. So those are just some of the things that you just kind of want to consider when you're making this move. I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that this video was helpful for you guys. I will leave everything down at the description box below. I will leave links to my website about mentorship. And again, I'm going to put those timestamps. So that way you guys, if you need anything, you kind of need to refer back to this video. That way you have something where you can kind of skim and scan. If you want to reach out to me, please feel free to email me or just shoot me a message or anything on any of my social media platforms. And please remember to subscribe. Tell a friend to come holla at your girl. Come see me. And if you need help with anything law school related, anything career related, holla at me and I got you. Thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you guys next time.